Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Townsend Guard, I'm a law professor, and I just wanna quilt. Our guest today is Bob Ruggiero, who is the Director of Publications and Public Information for Quilts Inc., the company that puts on the Quilt Market and Quilt Festival. And he is lovely. First, a huge thank you to Bob for allowing us to come as press to observe and experience and be part of this incredible week and a half long thing. Both Quilt Market, which is the business-to-business part of the quilt, this big quilt adventure, and the Quilt Festival, which is like over 50,000 people come to every year. He is also the voice of Quilt Market and Quilt Festival, so when you hear announcements over the loudspeaker, it's him, and he is the referee and MC for the Iron Quilt Challenge, which happens just at the beginning of Quilt Festival and was a lot of fun. So let's chat with Bob. Awesome. All right, hi. So we're chatting about the Quilt Market and the Quilt Festival. And as you know, you graciously let me come and observe and participate and be immersed in it for this year. So I super appreciate that. That was an amazing event.
Did you get my invoice yet?
No, I didn't get your invoice.
You thought all that was free? Okay, never
Totally.
Right, well.
Thousands and thousands of dollars that I now have to tell my dean that I spent accidentally.
Right.
Every faculty's nightmare. Yes, how to explain all of that. So the project is underway. We had a ton of really good response to doing interviews, which was super great. And we're just getting started doing that. From the top designers and fabric makers to the people making tools, we're sort of looking at all of it. And what I sort of want to talk to you about is the market itself and the festival and sort of a little bit how it, and then sort of your thoughts about what we should be looking for and what this industry is at this point. So it seems like what you guys have built is you're kind of the anchor, the hub, sort of the center of all of it. Like that's really where it all takes place. Would you agree with that? That sort of Quilt Market and Festival by extension is sort of, that is kind of the heart of sort of where the industry gathers.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that's not to denigrate any of the other public quilt shows, because there are other quilt shows, large and small, that go on throughout the country. But as far as the industry goes, yeah, Quilt Market is essentially the only trade show for the quilting and fabric and soft craft industry.
It's amazing. And how long has it been going? How long it's coming up on its, is it 40th anniversary? What anniversary are you guys at?
Quilt Market was founded, the fall edition was founded in 1979, and then we added a spring edition in 1981.
In 1979, that sort of makes sense, right? So we get the bicentennial where there's a kind of resurgence of quilting and interest in quilting, and then by 79, there's enough interest to have a market. Would you say that's what's happening?
Well, actually, it's and Carrie usually tells the story. It was kind of one woman that instigated her to kind of start Market, and I could send you all this information because I got it written down. But basically, she started the festival in 1974, and Carrie was also the owner of the quilt shop, Great Expectations Quilt Shop. Well, there's a woman in the industry who kind of kept, almost hounding her to start a trade show, and she kept saying, Carrie, the industry needs a trade show. We need a trade show. And Carrie's like, I'm not going to, take that on. I'm happy with the festival and being a shop owner. And she just kept haranguing her. And finally she said, I can't find this certain yellow fabric anywhere. You need to start a whole trade show so I can find yellow fabric.
I like that.
Carrie was friends with this woman, and she kind of jokes about that, but that's why she started the trade show, because one of her friends in the industry could not find a certain type of yellow fabric.
And how quickly did it grow? What did it look like that first year?
Oh, geez. I I'm not sure exactly. Just from the pictures I've seen from that era, obviously it was a much smaller show. When
Right.
people did booths, they kind of just threw it up there with the background and their goods on the table. Obviously, you've seen how people
It's
today
incredible.
put they hired some of them hire designers, human designers, just to do their booths because that's what really the booths is what really makes people stand out from a lot of the competition walking up and down the aisles, as you've seen.
Yeah. It's amazing. It is such a beautiful show. I can't imagine there's many shows that rival it around the world, and because it's all these quilters with their with the aesthetic
Right.
that makes it so gorgeous and so overwhelming. So, what do you think about it now? So, you get the sort of the way the story I keep hearing is that like 76 gets people interested in quilting. There isn't really like the quilting industry the way we see it. It starts to build. You guys are clearly part of that build because people are coming to the quilt market and being able to sort of see it. And now it's this. So so just in general, sort of how many people are coming to market? I mean, we know, and just tell us how it's grown a little bit.
Well, it's grown obviously with the industry as
Yeah.
more and more quilt shops opened around the country. They would send obviously representatives to market because I hate to say in the olden days, but if you were a quilt shop, back in the 70s and 80s, you had to kind of wait for the fabric reps and the tool reps to come to your shop to show you their catalog so you could place orders. And these sales reps would just literally travel around the country. So one of the advantages of market is that everybody is in one location, and then you as the shop owner can just go from
Booth to booth to booth.
exhibitor to exhibitor looking at all the different fabrics. So it's really all in one location. And of course the companies like that because they didn't have to send sales reps driving all over the country. They could send them to our show and have access to people that they might not be able to drive out to. So the market grew as the industry grew and more shops came. The other real thing that I think contributed to the growth of quilt market was the acceptance of quilts as an actual art form and not just, again, the history of quilts, as you know, is for more utilitarian purposes. People made quilts to keep warm or to, give as gifts and things like that. But after that 76 exhibit at the Whitney Museum, people started accepting quilts more as a legitimate art form, just along lines with painting and sculpture or anything, just the medium just happened to be fabric. So I think as that has grown and that acceptance has gotten bigger with the public, that's helped fuel the growth of the industry as well.
And do you think that the exhibition that goes along with the quilt market and quilt show is an important factor in the industry and sort of the quilt? What role does that play?
As far as you mean the quilts on display?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for market, I think it's a reminder for the people in the business of what the end result of their product is, that they can see a lot of the quilts in the final format. The special exhibits area where we hang the quilts, it doesn't, of course, get nearly the foot traffic it does during our public show. Where coming to see quilts is a very important part of the festival, but we still like to keep those exhibits up for market as a reminder for our exhibitors and quilt shop owners and also all the other attendees about what their customers are actually doing with all that fabric and tools and thread and things that they're buying at the show.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. It's so beautiful, and you also see the kind of crossover. Is it Cherrywood that does the contest that you buy their fabric and you make something? And right.
They had and Hoffman has done that as well. But the Cherrywood exhibit this year was a perfect example. I mean, it was the Van Gogh challenge, and you just saw, I think maybe there were 120 different quilts that all kind of looked uniform, but they all had a different impact, a different idea. I mean, that actually was one of our more popular exhibits this year in terms of people just, being wowed by it.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It really was.
I mean, even when people were trying to do like Starry Night, you had 10 different interpretations of that one painting.
And the cool thing was it was average people all over the country and the world sort of sending their stuff in, which usually doesn't really happen. I mean, it does with quilt shows, but there's a certain caliber. So this lets more people in.
Who might be intimidated making like a large, 80 by 80 quilt for an exhibit could find those smaller quilts for like those Cherrywood challenges or the Hoffman challenge more manageable for them.
So how important is Quilt Market to the industry itself? Do you see that this is an important in terms of the economics of the quilting industry? How much of their sales are really coming out of? Do we have a sense of how important this is to them?
We don't have an exact sense because, of course, the exhibitors they don't report to us how much they sold or how much they sold at our particular show. The interesting development over the past few years is that we know from talking to our exhibitors and attendees that there's actual less purchasing going on at market because people are buying more stuff online. I mean, that's just the way not only our industry is going, but every industry. So what we tried to do is try and beef up and talk about the importance of the things you can't get online at market, the networking, the classes, the events, things like that really still make Quilt Market the epicenter for the industry. I mean, if you're in the quilting industry, you kind of have to be at Quilt Market, but we understand that the actual sales that the exhibitors have or that the shops are spending are declining over previous years. And that also has to do with quilt shop owners just being more conservative in what they're spending. They don't want to have products sitting on their shelves a long, long time. So maybe they're ordering in less quantities than they would previously.
How important are the sewing machines and, strangely, the long arms? I was kind of amazed at how many long arm companies were there.
I mean, long arm popularity has just really exploded. I mean, I've seen it like in the past 10 years with more companies, more machines, and then also just more more people using them for their professional quilting. But I mean, it all starts with the machine, and as you've seen, as you probably know, some people are very loyal to certain brands or certain models of machines. I mean, I will only quilt on my Bernina. I will only quilt on my Handy Quilter. So I think a lot of the sewing machine companies are trying to build that brand loyalty in a way
and move into the long arms.
Yeah, and then the long arms as well. Now, of course, the long arms are a much more high ticket item, so that's not necessarily for the hobby quilter. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing more and more of the professional quilters or the full-time quilters using these machines. I mean, just because it's so easy to do them, and they can make larger quilts than maybe they could on a regular machine.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I think the other one I was surprised at is how many ruler companies there were. I'm not sure how this industry supports the amount of rulers out there, but that was interesting too. The gadgets and the sort of inventive side of it is kind of remarkable. I don't think people think of quilting as an entrepreneurial space, but a lot of sort of small shops or a small person doing an invention. Do you see that as an increase too? Do you see has it always been the case that you've had sort of a lot of, I made this thing and I'm at Quilt Market trying to sell it, or has that increased with the entrepreneurial thing going on in the country that we have
I think a little of both. I mean, it's funny you mentioned rulers because you think, well, how many different ways can you possibly, have a ruler? But come up with ways to do it. And again, there's a certain amount of brand loyalty there. But a lot of gadgets, not gadgets, like notions and tools people invented are from a need. I mean, literally, quilters like, well, how can I cut this fabric more efficiently, or how can I trim this thread more accurately? And so people are inventing these little notions and tools to fulfill a need, and not just necessarily throwing something out on the market. As with any industry, there's competition. So you'll have, as you mentioned, 5 ruler companies or 6 thread cutting companies, and it's just trying to get into the consumer's mind and really get into the shop owner's mind that this is the brand that you want. And all of them have different little functions or different aspects to them that make them slightly different from one another.
It's really interesting. Do you see consistency in who is coming to Quilt Market in terms of booths? Do you have much turnover in who the vendors are for the Quilt Market side of it? Or is it pretty stable?
It tends to be stable. We probably, I would say, of the maybe 450 or so exhibiting companies we had at market, Probably 40 of them were new, 45 of them were new,
Interesting.
completely new to our show.
Yeah.
So these are newer companies and also more offshoot companies. What we see is, did you go to the beginning of the schoolhouse?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so Carrie usually always asks, I don't remember if I was there, but
Yeah.
Carrie usually asks if this is your first market as an
Right.
attendee, raise your hand. And I'm always impressed that, just